Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, the Big Website Optimization Ideas webinar. The webinar features Guy Yalif, CEO of Intellimise, and Ben LeBay, Managing Director of Spiro. During the webinar, please feel free to enter any questions you have in the Q&A module at the bottom of your screen. And now, without further ado, I turn it right over to Ben to introduce himself. Ben?
Hey, everybody. Ben LeBay, Managing Director, Spiro. I've been working for about 5 years. First came on under, working directly with Pep Laya, Conversion Excel, CXL Institute, CXL Agency, now Spiro. I've been running for the last 5 years experimentation programs for companies around the world. Some fun, big, fast-growing startups like MongoDB, Miro, Code Academy, but also some behemoths like ADP, Serta Simmons, things like that. So before that, I've got a career and a kind of a stint in academia. I spent 10 years there, so I'm a bit of a geek on the research science sides of things. So that's where I come in, especially on talking about a bunch of ideas which we're about to get into and geek out on. Guy?
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. My name is Guy Yalif. I'm co-founder and CEO of Intellimise. For the last several years, my team and I have been putting AI in the hands of marketing and growth teams to help personalize web experiences for each unique visitor in the moment so they can drive more revenue, more customer signups, and more leads to sales. I've also been a marketer and product guy optimizing digital experiences across industries for the last 15 years while at Twitter, Yahoo, and Brightroll. And for me, that journey started a long time ago when I coded a rules-based expert system to design airplanes in college. We've had the privilege of working with Ben and his team at Spiro for 4 or 5 years now, and I'm really excited to share some of our shared and sometimes different thinking today. In today's webinar, we're going to share a bunch of web optimization ideas from a brand new ebook that we're really excited about. It's a collaboration between Spiro by CXL and Intellimise, where we've collected many of our favorites in the hopes that they inspire marketers in ways that further their success. We had a lot of ideas, well over 100, and we whittled them down to more repeatable ones that we liked the most. We got it down to 71. And you're going to see a mix of examples across B2B, e-commerce, other B2C website experiences. And we hope you enjoy the ones that we can fit into today. And we invite you to check out the whole book afterwards. You're going to get all the details by email shortly after we're done. So let's dive in. We're going to begin with a bunch of ideas and spend most of our time there. Please, as Sesame said, jump in with questions in the questions box anytime. We'll do our best to answer them and stay roughly on time. Additionally, towards the end, we're going to take some time to put these concepts, these ideas in context through some great frameworks Ben's going to walk us through. With that, let's get it started. I'll turn it back over to Ben.
So I'm going to go over the first idea, and as Guy mentioned, the first half, let's just go through a bunch of ideas. Guy and I will sort of go back and forth and jump in on these. A bunch of just random ideas can be quite dangerous, so they need to be placed in context. We will add some context on the ideas, but at the end, we want to sort of hammer in like why it's important to have sort of a business context, a customer problem context on top of that. We start here though on this one. This is we do a lot of mattress work. Started with Serta Simmons, and they bought Tufted Needle, and so other companies as well. But this one speaks to adjusting for changes in user intent, considering the buying environment, right? So you can see here in 2019, Tufted Needle was really big into satisfying this intent bucket of I want to go try this mattress. And so you could see that banner there on the left side in 2019. In 2020, that intent, that bucket of I want to go went away. People didn't want to go anywhere, so they kind of took that away. Generally, there's a rubric here for user intents that you can play around with the site, especially on landing pages. I want to know, I want to do, I want to go, I want to buy. And it's rare to have all four on one site. Mattresses are the rare case where they have all four, because the direct-to-consumer mattresses you can buy right from the site. But also you might want to go lay on the thing, or you might want to go to the store, and so you need a store finder, that kind of thing. And so the conversion problem here, it can be quite complicated in terms of addressing or accounting for the different levels of user intent, types of user intent. Top task polling helps here to figure that out, to delineate, especially like the mobile halo effect. What types of user intents are going on mobile versus desktop. Let's characterize that, and then let's create sort of a kind of element strategy, messaging strategy, accounting for that. Yeah.
Resonates a ton. Meeting your prospects where they are in their journey with you. To your point, their journeys are different. And one of the key steps in that journey is talking to them about these things and how much your service costs. One idea that many of us spend a lot of time thinking about is how to present and frame pricing. This is relevant to anyone selling anything, whether that's a retailer, a consumer subscription seller, B2B SaaS provider. As always, just as Ben was talking about on the last slide, begin by thinking about the mindset of your visitor. In this case, when they're seeing price, what do they need to see, think, or feel to help them move forward? Some hypotheses for you to consider. Is focusing on value important to your prospects? If so, one way to try that is to tweak how you present the price. Like, is $9.99 more effective? Will that convert better than $10? Another idea, if you're promo-based rather than everyday low priced, do you want to lean into your promo cycle? You might then focus and put front and center savings versus your regular price. And you could further explore how you highlight savings. Like, if you've got a low priced item, percent savings may feel bigger, more impactful. If you have a high priced item, presenting that same number, but as dollars saved instead of percent, that might feel bigger and more valuable to your prospect. Some other ideas to consider in different situations. If you're selling a subscription, you can highlight value by, as you see on the screen, focusing on the savings per item purchased or per time period. That's one idea. You see that in the green. You could instead focus on the price per item or per time. You see that just above here. Or you could go to total savings, which is the most prominent thing Nutrition Kitchen has done in the white text on the red background here. As you know, pricing is one of the biggest choices for any business, and it's typically a key accelerant or impediment for subscription businesses and businesses pursuing a product-led growth strategy. Ben, I think you also have a bunch of thoughts on this too. Want to chime in?
I do have a ton of thoughts here. The pricing page, whether it's e-commerce or lead gen, is a massive area of focus for our programs. There's multiple accounts that I can think of that focus only here, especially in this world of commoditization. So this is like taking a step back a little bit more strategically. In the SaaS world, especially, there's more and more commoditization. There's more and more competition. And so the models is shifting from sales-driven organizations over to product and marketing-driven organizations and freemium types of models showing price. But how do you show price? How do you commoditize what you don't want to commoditize in the right way? So strategically, there's a lot of implications here. Progressive exposure of pricing depending on user inputs prior. We do a lot of like wizarding to get to this stage, and you only show types of pricing or certain packages accordingly. A lot of examples on like kind of wealth front and fintech organizations like that. Loan organizations do a lot of that. H&R Block does a lot of really cool stuff on that sort of wizarding and progressive exposure piece. Guy, you spoke to anchor effects, kind of like, illustrating or showing the value or increasing the value perception based on what you're showing for second, third. A lot of behavioral psychology here. Also, the packages, bundles, and plans. We're seeing a big movement over just FYI over to the term plans as opposed to packages and bundles. Just that's kind of a tactical thing. What they pivot off of. What's the value metric? Is it time-based, user-based? The value metric being clear on that and not having two value metrics in the same plan is having multiple value metrics across your plans can create a massive amount of cognitive load for the user. So if you're into more of this work, and we can have our own webinar just on this, or this deserves its own ebook. There's a few slides in here like this. If you're into like SaaS, especially pricing and pricing pages, Profitwell is a really cool org to follow. Their marketing and content has a lot of that. We get a lot of ideas on what to do for this journey stage. Yeah.
And resonates a ton and sort of super deep topic to go into. Pam asks, hey, what are your thoughts on shipping costs if you're shipping physical goods? Maybe I'll chime in, and Ben, I bet you've got a bunch as well. In my mind, it goes to cognitive load that Ben was talking about and having one value metric. Think, is this part of the storyline? Is shipping an advantage for you or something that you want to come later on? So if you want them to focus just on the product, focus on the product and introduce shipping at the end. If instead shipping is an advantage where you say, oh, we have, free shipping or shipping that's fast, right? Your core value prop may be, I'm going to get it to you tomorrow. Visualize yourself holding this thing tomorrow. Put that front and center. If you're using shipping as a mechanism to shape their behavior where you say, hey, free shipping above X, I think it's a wonderful thing right next to the add to cart to say, hey, add 2 more of these to get free shipping, add 4 more of these to get free shipping. And so in my mind, it depends on how you are using shipping to go shape behavior of your prospects, presented in a way that supports that. Ben, what does this trigger for you?
A lot. So, shipping is a problem or a feature. Do we want to make money off of it or not make money off of it? Should we do a threshold pricing to affect our AOV, for example? That's a direct lever to play around with that. If you're on Shopify, really cool new app, only 6 months old, I believe. Ship Scout does a lot of threshold testing and allow you to do that real seamlessly in Shopify. Otherwise, it's doable on any other platform, just a little bit more of a manual process to test like these thresholds versus free versus whatever it might be. We've even done a lot of like business development work on, seeing where the shipping cost, we don't want to make money on shipping. We don't want to like charge extra, but we don't want to lose. How does our purchase rate kind of pan out? How do we get some predictive understanding of inventory based on shipping and where the product is going? We work for a kind of a dog food company that like it's heavy, dog food's heavy, and they're quite large, a lot of volumes. And so they were able to like crunch through some of those questions and that data, do some experiments and understand, hey, we need a distribution center over here, right? So that's online to offline kind of data implication story there. Yeah, there's a lot there.
Lot to unpack and a bunch of additional ideas to go through. Let's turn to the next one. Ben, you want to talk about the product teaser?
So product teasers, I mentioned earlier the commoditization, especially in the SaaS area. We play around with this quite a bit of you get to the marketing website, you're in the consideration phase, you're trying to get eyeballs, in this world where it's harder to track people, harder and harder to do remarketing and cost of acquisition is going up. You're wanting to have product-led growth. Let's get them in the product, right? And so this is more and more a big area of testing. It's almost like getting your website and your product a little bit more blended. This screenshot that we're looking at here is the tip of the iceberg, but this is that transition point of like, some action on a landing page or a shopper site kind of got you. Okay, let's go into the product. You convinced me to hit that button to get there. How do you then convince them to engage? How do you onboard? How do you manage expectations? Do they expect to go into the product from the CTA that they clicked on the landing page? That's important and weirdly overlooked a lot. Really user expectation here. So, teasing the product from underneath is a way to sort of motivate. I've seen it work. I've seen it not work as well. So it's all about the expectation management, the user intent matching here. Yeah.
Super insightful. And I also imagine, the thing that person sees will also have a big impact, right? If you have a super advanced UI that may engage someone, it may push someone away. As you've said, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. One of the things that I've seen us, I'll own this myself, right? I spent 10 years as a product guy, 10 years as a marketer. As a marketer, like how many of us are guilty of not acknowledging that a prospect has been on our site before? For me, that was all 10 years. Or just as bad, if not worse, how many of us treated an existing customer like a prospect when they showed up on our site? We've got them already. There are a bunch of different things we want to tell them. Simply remembering these small behavioral details and creating a different experience for those visitors actually can have an outsized impact on your prospect's behavior. Case in point, this simple variation you see on Drift running on this screen helped them boost conversions by 13%. More broadly, not that that's a guarantee, that's one example that happened to work for them. More broadly, you can take this notion of visit memory further. In a B2B context, you could infer somebody who's been to your site 4 to 5 times, they're clearly interested. You might choose to put more aggressive talk to sales message in front of them. Thinking about drift, you might put a more aggressive drift bot on the page, right? You get the generic one when they first show up, you get the, hey, it's time to talk to sales one if it's your 4th or 5th time. We strongly believe in meeting your prospects where they are in their journey with you. There are many other things we think are worth remembering. And for this idea, we'll just focus on, have you been here before? Ben, you've got some thoughts about this related to product types, right?
Yeah, so I want to lay out a framework for how to get this right on how to treat the visitors a little bit differently, because we often break things down into verticals or industries like B2B e-commerce, and like Unbounce, for example, just put out this big report on conversion rates, and they said e-commerce has like X conversion rate, and it really bothers me as a data scientist and someone that I see like the misuse of data very often. When you're thinking about applying different experiences or messaging to different users, like new versus returning, it's really important to think about product type. And so the framework that I like to use is convenience, shopping, unsought, and specialty, kind of classic product type groupings. But here's how it applies. So we're looking at drift right now, which is sort of the SaaS product. New versus returning, they might be a shopping visitor. They might have shopping intent if they're new, but they might have sort of more of a transactional intent if they come in and they're a returning user. And so you can adjust accordingly based on that hypothesis. The clearest example are supplements, this really illustrates it really well. Actually, let me start. Deodorant is a classic convenience product. I've seen deodorant websites have conversion rates to like 15, 20, 25% conversion rates. Because when you go to buy, you go to a website to buy deodorant online, you're not shopping, you're not opening multiple tabs. You're going to buy deodorant, right? That's a convenience product. Flowers is another example. Supplements like nutrition, vitamins, aspirins, these types of things, the new user is in shopping mode. So the conversion rates are really low, 2-3% max. The returning visitor though, that's a convenience product at that point. I know who I'm buying from, and I just want it again and again and again. I get my magnesium from this website, something like that. And so how you treat them, how transactional versus how not, that framework earlier, I want to know, I want to do, I want to go, I want to buy, it drastically differs. And so the messaging, pivot on that, use that as a framework for hypotheses. The new user is in shopping mode. The returning user is in convenience product mode. They're not shopping, they're buying, right? In that case, you can sacrifice cart completes to focus on AOV. You can sacrifice conversion rate to focus on lifetime value. So your strategy can differ accordingly. Yeah. I geeked out too much on that one, maybe.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Let's talk about onboarding.
Yeah, this is another one. This is the second one, like the pricing example on this one. It's a simple slide here. We're looking at Noom and a little bit of their wizard on getting somebody onboarded. But this slide represents what could be its own webinar, its own ebook, and really represents a concept that's the future of websites, of marketing, of definitely product marketing. And it's the idea of bringing in the onboarding flow from the onset of the website. So no more scrolling, no more like top line navigation. It's your one action right above the fold, and it gets you answering questions, and it gets you nodding your head. There's a yes ladder technique there, consistency principle, sunk cost fallacy. There's a lot of principles at play here to get somebody to go in and do something and engage. You can start using that zero-party data to do product development, to do remarketing more efficiently, to do sales scoring more efficiently, etc. So this is a huge topic. a huge area of focus on this. And again, the progressive journeying as well, it could lead to that pricing page. It can lead to that product. It can lead to just a lot of things. In effect as well, what it's doing is inverting the menu, the nav menu. So you think about your navigation, but let's put it in the hero. Let's put it in the website. Let's stop like having that prototypicality of like making the user kind of guess at what these labels mean. And let's ask questions. Let's speak to outcomes and not features of your product. Let's talk about the customer's pain instead of them, but by getting them to answer those questions. So onboarding questions, this idea could be labeled wizarding or quizzes or progressive exposure, intelligent routing. There's a lot of labels for this test idea. Yeah.
It's a great one. And we get a question from Kathy who says, hey, do you think there are any nuggets in this webinar for manufacturers who don't sell direct to the public, only sell through their dealer network, i.e. pricing isn't posted online? Hey, Kathy, at least to me, yes, absolutely. I think a bunch of the things we're describing here are about, frankly, shaping human behavior. And it may be that in your case, the human behavior you want is somebody to look up a dealer. Or you didn't say this, but look up a store because you can't sell online. Or you didn't say this either, but you're only B2B. And so I want them to talk to sales. I think a bunch of these techniques apply in, welcoming them back, recognizing where they are in their journey with you, thinking about what do they need to see in this moment. Pricing is one part of the equation, but we've seen, for example, B2B companies do the wizarding that Ben was just talking about, helping the prospect understand which of these many things that I offer are relevant and where should I go get it from. Those are some of the things that come to mind for me. Ben, anything triggered for you?
Yeah, it's the exact same principle at play here. I mean, we work with big B2B, like these like non-sexy brands. I won't name a name, but like a global company selling air compressors. There's no pricing online. It's still e-commerce, but it's more of like that lead gen e-commerce, right? But the same principle applies there. Companies selling like a lot of manufacturing companies. DigiKey is a good example of doing the same thing. Massive catalog of products. They're showing price though. Yeah, the same principle applies, but you're leading them to a solution architecture or a marketecture, if we want to throw in a bunch of random names out there. Like you're leading them to a set of solutions and then an action, right? Whether that's buy or talk to sales or whatever. Action is the word, right? It might not be buy.
Totally with you. Kushi also asked, hey, Ben, the e-commerce example for the supplement company for return customers was really helpful. Is there a resource I can find where I can find more actionable information as follow-up?
On the product type framework, I'm wondering, or what more specifically, actually, Guy, what do you think that question is? He's typing there. What do you think that question, Guy, means?
We'll wait for Kushi to reply. I'll go on to the next idea and then we'll come back to this.
Cool.
So how many of you have a long form for customers to fill out? Maybe it's a lead gen form in B2B, or Kathy's, hey, which dealer in the network should I push it to? Maybe it's a checkout page in e-commerce or an application form in financial services. Like think about applying for a mortgage. That's a long form. If you have long forms or checkout flows, which span multiple sections or pages, they can feel more daunting than they need to for visitors. Consider setting expectations and helping your visitors feel a sense of progress by showing your visitor just how much they've gone through the flow. This may encourage them to continue, reassure them that completion is just around the corner. In particular, if you're breaking up super long forms into multiple steps, help prospects know how much further they have to go. In e-commerce, as Ben and I were preparing for this, he was reminding me, like, this has been pretty much standardized in the checkout flow. You can see here a typical flow on screen. I think, Ben, you were saying Shopify might even have this as part of their default template. You can test, pardon me, different placements and formats of the progress feature to determine what works best for your customers. In some cases, you may not actually know how long a flow will be. What do I mean? We had a financial services client that has a sort of choose your own adventure application flow. Literally, the number of steps and which steps in the application flow depended on your answers to certain questions. Are you higher risk, lower risk? Do you own a home? Do you not own a home? Even in this scenario where you don't know deterministically which steps will be in a flow, you can still use this approach. That particular client chose to estimate the time left in the flow. At the start, they said something like 3 minutes left. And then as visitors got further through the flow, they just changed the estimate, right? 2 minutes left, 1 minute left. It wasn't perfectly accurate, but it was roughly accurate. And it gave their applicants a sense of where they were in the flow. This same approach of helping visitors know where they are in the flow is often used with success in some of the examples Ben talked about a little bit earlier in wizards and quizzes as well.
Yeah, I would connect it with the idea just before it very explicitly, and you could see a lot of that, like on the, you mentioned fintech guy, the a lot of the kind of the B2C service website, you know, like lemonade.com, Betterment, Ladder Life, a lot of like insurance, and the brokerages out there like gohealth.com that does a lot of the insurance brokerage work, long application forms, loan applications from banks and stuff like that. Context is context and motivation and commitment, right? Like what's the commitment here? What am I getting myself into? Like how many questions am I asking on the e-com side? You know, Ipsy, you know, if you're wanting to get some like cosmetics and makeup, they make you answer like 30 questions. Like, what am I getting myself into? Like answering all these questions. And it's the context that for one provides just clarity of what's going to be expected. And then on the flip side, certainty of success. Those are the key principles at play here. Like they're really talking to me. They're really setting myself up to get some makeup that works for me, you know, that kind of thing. And checkout forms is a really like, it's really key there. Like, you know, gohealth.com, older demographic generally going into these healthcare marketplaces through these types of portals. And they're not understanding what they're getting themselves into. And so extreme clarity of expectation management on a form helps a ton. It's a big driver of success for form completion.
Awesome. Great insight. Ben, want to talk about tone? There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, this might be another one of the, like that third example of like, it could be its own webinar. So the tone, I've thrown out a couple like frameworks on like the product categories, the intent buckets. I want to know, I want to go, etc. Those frameworks can allow you to adjust your tone, and the examples that we previously brought up kind of are related to that. And when you're creating a lot of new content variations, and you're sort of pivoting off of a hypothesis, you got to think about how you're talking to the visitor, and it can be a real source of sort of hypothesis inspiration to think about tones. Like the examples here, casual versus direct. You know, direct is buy now versus start considering. So that new user, you know, start considering, learn more. The returning user, let's be more transactional. Let's go for the throat, right? Just the facts versus conversational. You know, just the facts is like 9 out of 10 people who switch will see a, you know, 25% lift or something like that. Conversational, if you're looking for a safe bet, consider trying solution X or something like that. And then the big one, features versus benefits or outcome, right? Are you product focused? Are you sort of customer focused? Do you talk about feature XYZ? Do you compete on features, which is dangerous to do more and more? Or do you compete on who the buyer is, like who you're a hero to? You know, so you know, what's the outcome? What's the pain that you're solving? And this is solution architecture type of work here. But generally, you know, there's two angles. Are you selling a restaurant point of sale systems? Are you making the back of the house of a restaurant run smoothly, right? Like that's like a kind of a different thing. Actually, that's not the, anyway, you see a Toast POS example on that one. They do a lot of great work on their site. Scarcity versus abundance type of thing, how negative versus positive you are in your languaging. That is one cool area of like Unbounce's report that they got to, actually was talking about how sentiment Language sentiment can kind of affect conversion rates a little bit, but scarcity, sign up now, you got to go, go, go. Abundance, sessions are all the time, grab your spot. But more and more countdown timers and tactics are you're buying short-term conversions. They will win in a test, but you're buying short-term conversions. So you got to be careful about some of these scarcity and abundance types of things. But
resonates a ton. And we see customers investing in this way of thinking a lot. Product marketing teams in particular love, like, hey, I want to try different messaging. I want my prospects to tell me what works. On the scarcity one, one additional thought is just don't lie. Like if you don't actually have your inventory system hooked up and you say there are 3 spots left, and the next time they refresh, it says you have 6 spots left and then 2 spots left because you're random number generating, like that's not great on multiple levels. But this mindset of these 4 spectrums, there are others, resonates very, very strongly and ties really to the core of your marketing and your brand and how you want to represent yourself, and can help you simultaneously tune the messaging that you use in other marketing channels from what can sometimes be the world's biggest focus group on your website. Kushi came back and clarified, hey, follow up on my previous question. How do I know more about which tests to run for return customers, what metrics to focus on, and how I measure success? From my perspective, since you're talking about existing customers, my head goes to what opportunities do you have for them? So if you're in a business that's sort of land and expand, okay, highlight for them the incremental things they can do or buy or use. If you're in a stage of, hey, I need them to activate, highlight that to them, show them, oh, hey, welcome back. Would you now like to do X? Like in financial services, there are a bunch of companies that have you open the account, but you didn't put any money in the account yet, right? You're not doing anything yet. If it is, they bought the one SKU you have, they're using it fully, you might want to highlight your most recent release or thought leadership or some advice you might have for them. I think it really does tie the metrics, depending on what you're trying to achieve for the business, are some of the things that come to mind for me. Ben, what comes to mind for you?
Yeah, I'd lay down a rubric here. And again, product type differences on what you would do. If you are a long consideration type of product, which is also known as a shopping product, you open a lot of tabs, you do a lot of research, a lot of consideration goes into it. The people that buy agency services are like this. The people that buy expensive tools to do experimentation are like this. If you buy a couch, you open a lot of tabs, you shop around. The returning visitor is almost the same as a new visitor. You're not going to go right to a 20% coupon code in a couch because you're going to lose some money. Don't go right there so quickly. So you're still focusing on similar things. You're just trying to engage, and everything that Guy mentioned kind of applies here. Now, on the flip side of things, the convenience product, if it is, deodorant, this flowers, things that people know what the experience of buying is, they know what they're going to get, and they're just going to go buy. And you could tell by your conversion rates just really quite high, 4 to 20% or something like that is what I've seen. Just to cue me in on that segment is more in that like convenience product style of transaction. Don't focus on conversion rate. Focus on AOV. Focus on lifetime value. Focus on customer service at that point, and customer service as a channel, things like that. Sacrifice your conversion rate for your other big areas of revenue growth, which is like average order value or repeat purchases. Yeah.
Awesome. We have more ideas than we can fit in 10 minutes to cover. We'll go for about 10, and then we'll flip over to the framework Ben's going to walk through and some more Q&A. So let me turn to the next one. This is a goodie. As I mentioned, I spent the last 15 years in ad tech, helping marketers, including myself as a marketer, deliver the right message to the right person at the right time, right? That was the goal. And we all work so hard at doing that. And then oddly, we get a prospect to our website. We forget all of it. We show everyone the same thing. It makes no sense to us at all. Instead, we believe you should continue the messaging that that prospect found compelling in your ad on your landing page. Mechanically, you've probably already instrumented in your ad UTM parameters for your own analytical needs. Use those to continue the imagery, keywords or phrases or special offers from your ad onto your landing page. Here's an example where Facebook has a video ad that features former world chess champion Garry Kasparov promoting a class on how to play chess. Fine. You click on the ad, it opens a landing page where there's an image of Gary showcasing the chess class. This offers a tailored experience that continues based on my presumed interest in chess, rather than the generic base website's landing page that doesn't even mention chess. Ben, what's our next idea?
Yeah, this next one is rather simple and powerful and easy to like do within a month. And that's branding your guarantee. So making customers understand how you stand behind your product, right? I mean, there's a playbook here, like get with your team, characterize your guarantee, your service, like how well you stand behind your product, put that into words, put that into like little blurbs, and then name it. Right? If it's an e-commerce example, that's what we're looking at right here. Bombas has done this for a long time. They call it the happiness guarantee. They've branded it. They've made it their own. They're fighting, Amazon in this case and things like that. And they're really trying to carry that messaging through the buying experience, not only on the digital experience, but also through customer service and the product itself, and the product messaging and packaging will have reference to this as well. But yeah, the playbook, get with your team, like do a workshop on like what's your point of view on how well you stand behind your product? What guarantees do you offer, and how do you put that into like a little bit of a story arc, right? And then name it, and then just sprinkle it around the experience, the customer experience, the digital, the product packaging, the service, the follow-up messagings, the emails, etc. Brand it. So this one, it's easy. It's almost not even a test. Stand it up and then maybe tweak it within some tests, but really powerful.
Totally agree with you, Ben. Think branding your guarantee, some differentiator, something you're already doing as a classical tool, as you said, in storytelling. And often, I totally agree with you. You can and should just make up a name for this thing you're already doing, as we see on screen, where you are painting a picture of a great future for that prospect, reassuring them of some concern they have. And then you talked about a bunch of places where you can make it visible. I'd emphasize within that the places of drop-off where they're worried about their experience, or they have a lack of trust, or they need some reassurance about the future. For example, like the moment they're entering their credit card.
Yep. First-time buyers, especially, right? Like,
Totally.
Crank that volume up on that one. Yeah.
Moving forward, decision friction, great topic. Happens all the time and comes with the best of intentions, out of the best of intentions from us as marketers. This happens when we, the marketer, ask a question of our visitor that they're not informed enough to answer, even though it will help us serve them better, or we try to give them flexibility and we give them too many options, leading to choice paralysis, often called the paradox of choice. We invite you to take a moment, think through your prospect's journey through your site. Look for places where you're asking a prospect to make a decision or a choice, which is likely a bunch of places. Then double check yourself. Does my typical prospect really know enough to answer this question in this moment? Sometimes you're asking them questions they're uncomfortable answering, or feel uncertain about the decision, or are embarrassed they don't know the answer to. If so, can you remove the decision? Can you make the decision less risky to make? Can you reassure them the decision's reversible, if in fact that's the case? Or can you succinctly give them the info they need to make a better decision? Another thought, at those decision points, can you simplify the choices? Paradoxically, a little choice might help, and a lot of choice might actually cause your prospects to just seize up and not move forward because they need to evaluate all those choices. If you have a hypothesis that this is the case, run tests aimed at actually reducing their choice. Like you might hide some extra options behind a more link. You might remove them altogether. Or as the screenshot shows, you might prompt them with predetermined answers. And even better, if you can, select a default, pre-select a default choice. You're reducing their cognitive load by doing this. In this case, you're giving them a sense, in this example on screen, what's a typical donation? How big should that be? And you're keeping the flexibility for them to donate any amount they want. A third idea to consider in this vein is to reduce choice by spelling out the choices explicitly. I'm thinking of one beauty brand with whom we work. They took a drop-down menu for size. They only had 2 or 3 options in it. They got rid of the drop-down menu and presented 2 or 3 buttons. Okay, this reduced 1 click by not requiring visitors to click the drop-down to see the list of sizes. It also presented all the information right there on screen. It actually materially helped increase conversions in that situation. I wouldn't say this same thing for like Zappos, because shoes typically have a zillion options. But ultimately, this is about reducing cognitive load.
Yeah, that example of the drop down makes me think of I'm going to name drop here, like Native Deodorant. I worked on that website for like 3 years. Procter and Gamble brand now, really popular. If you go to their product page, you'll see a bunch of like the scent swatches. Really similar, actually inspired by Bombas. I've got a whole story on that. But the swatches, and they used to be all hidden behind a drop-down menu, right? And it's much more visual now, and it's a lot more clear and kind of inviting, even though it's actually quite busier, like you would think, but it's busier but more clear. And in principle, this decision friction is a fascinating one, and there's no like right or wrong answer. You just really have to like think about the principle at play. I like to think about this around like control versus focus. If you remove elements, you increase focus. You add elements, you actually increase sort of control for the user. So how do you balance that? And there's no like right or wrong answer, and that's where personalization can kind of come in and help things, because then you'll match it to user intent buckets, right? Another thing to throw out here is around like removing elements, thinking about friction. There's a testing and experimentation technique known as conversion signal mapping. And it's the name of a particular style of testing where you're just removing things, like pluck it out. And then you measure the effect on a metric of removing it. Or it being there, right, and control and vary it. So you're sort of mapping out the conversion or sort of the metric effect of particular pieces of content according to how they contribute to the whole. It's conversion signal mapping. Yeah.
Focus versus control resonates completely. Conversion signal mapping resonates. You triggered for me, and then we're going to go to your framework. In B2B, often we talk about, hey, remove form fields from the form fill out to contact sales, and sales often like lays down on the track and says, no, you can't do that. I need every single one of these fields. Yeah. And I often invite our customers, the marketer, to tell sales, okay, I understand that will make engaging with the prospect harder. What if in return for losing that field, you got double the number of prospects? Yeah. Nothing magical about double, pick a number. So you can have a discussion about the trade-offs and then do exactly what you said, Ben, that sort of conversion signal mapping of remove the field, see how much better conversion you get, and decide, is that trade-off worth it, rather than having a black and white discussion. I'm going to move us forward because we're now 45 minutes through, where you'll see some additional ideas that we were going to cover about thank you pages and navigation placement in the ebook. But now we wanted to take a step back and think a little bit about, what do you do before you start running all these ideas? How do you actually have better ingredients to do them in the first place? And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ben.
Yeah, so this is where I like to focus a lot of our work as an agency right now, is on the program side of things. And so the ideas, it's easy to get ideas. The quality ingredients are still lacking, I think, in the industry just generally. And you need to have a research team doing the, talking to customers, working with customer data. The big, ultimately the bigger, customer problem you're solving, the more successful you're going to be. But it's still not good enough. It's still like, even if you have good ingredients, is still not enough. And so we do a lot of program auditing. The slide you're looking at now speaks to a big study that we did recently, experimentation maturity model study. We asked like 200 plus, like 210 experimentation programs like 40 or 50 questions on, their culture and strategy, their process and method, their tools and data, their people and skills, these pillars of the experimentation program. The ideas are never enough. And that's what's really clear when we look at what's the difference between a transformatively labeled, we've got kind of a 5 step characterization of like where people fall out depending on that audit. And it's how they're answering and the data that they're answering and what determines if they're transformative versus kind of beginner or aspiring. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but it's really how they're using the data that makes the most sense. And so this speaks to everything above or a bunch of random ideas, but I wonder how many times I said the word context, right? Or user intent buckets, or, you can't just have random ideas. You still need to be focusing on customer problems on one side. So the customer problem focus is the marketing priority. And then the business strategy focus, that's the competitive landscape focus, right? Those two things is where, product marketing kind of lives. And to be transformative, the signals that we're seeing in here to be successful in running these experimentation programs, the idea prioritization needs to be top down. It needs to come from an understanding of the problems of your customers, considering the competitive landscape. It doesn't need to be bottom up. And what I mean by bottom up is like, we need to increase the conversion rate. That's a bottom up prioritization like mentality. You need to start with the bigger customer problems if you want your experimentation function to lead to better decisions faster, which is the point of the measurement system of testing, experimentation, and data. So don't just test randomly, have context. Guy, I think we've got 5 levels here. I think you've got a system for this as well.
We think about this similarly in that, these ideas and the tools you use to implement them, like you can use them in a variety of different ways. And we in that maturity spectrum, more colloquially, more anecdotally, we'll say, like, you can say, I've done the primary user research. I understand the mindset of my prospect. I've developed hypotheses on how to move them further through the funnel based on that. And here's some tests to prove or disprove those hypotheses. You could say, you know what, I've got this rank ordered backlog of ideas I want to try. And most often we see those driven by some notion of cost return. Here's my estimated benefit from this test if it works. Here's how much it'll take to implement it. Then we see folks one level notch less mature saying, you know what, I've got a bunch of ideas sort of in my head and I never thought I could go bring them to life, so I haven't even organized them. And then, earliest maturity, we see folks are like, so what do I do next? And we see that spectrum. And in all of those, you could run the ideas we just talked about before. You can implement them, bring them to life, and learn from them. The difference between a text change in that homepage hero that has a huge impact and one that is just another test is this user insight. And I think uncomfortably for many marketers, many of us aren't here because we haven't done the work, and the work will not be done tomorrow. And we do want to drive lift tomorrow. And so in parallel, to try to take what we know about our business, because we're going to know it the best, and use that to do ever more informed ideas and to then marry that with more user insight, truly walking a day in the shoes of your prospects, we think will produce better results. You'll run the same, right? And mechanically you change the text on the homepage, but the ingredients are better, to Ben's point. And Ben, should we turn to, I think you have some survey results tied to this to back this up quantitatively. Should we turn there?
Is that the next slide, the graph on the next slide? Is that what you mean by the survey results?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good tee up. I didn't take it well. Yeah, so this is a peek into the report, and this one speaks to customer data and insights explicitly. The key thing to note here is just that pattern, sort of the hockey stick pattern, and how quickly like the red kind of increases there on these businesses in the later stages, indicating that they are really explicitly dealing with customer data and insights. And there, that agreement also adds to the fact that they are strategic and transformative, but the key is that pattern there that we see sort of in the beginning stages They're just not thinking about it. They're not thinking about customer problems as explicitly as they should be. So, yeah, Guy, any other thoughts on that?
Two things. One, let me invite those listening in to add questions to the chat, because we'll turn to that momentarily. We've been answering them along the way. And the second, Ben, is this resonates completely. And part of me is like, wait a minute, isn't this sort of a truism, a tautology? Like being more CRO mature, like on the right side of this, is in part literally about taking into account your customers more. Isn't this sort of like, a truism?
Yeah, like it's not this isn't a statistical output. This is a characterization of the data. So it's the data pattern that's interesting. And there's like 45 questions or 40 to 50 questions, somewhere around there. And all of those data points go into determining the 5 levels, and some more than others. So some will see like a weak pattern effectively. But this is one of the stronger patterns that we saw, where it just went, from like nothing, nothing, nothing. Okay. And then we acknowledge it. We are explicitly considering customer data and insights. So it's, and it might be a language thing as well here. Like, what does it mean to consider data and, customer data and insights? How is that defined? Maybe the more mature they are, they use that terminology more often than not. So certainly some language pitfalls here as you're, which is par for the course for this type of stuff.
Totally. As it's an evolving field with evolving frameworks and ways of thinking about it, and language to use, which is part of why it is so much fun to talk about it. Everyone who attended today will get a link to this ebook in their email. And I invite you to ask additional questions. Ben and I could riff on this literally for hours. I see one. I'm just getting started with testing. How do I decide which page or idea to focus on first? Maybe I'll take a crack at this, and Ben, then turn it over to you. We often encourage our customers to think about, you're taking your prospects on a journey digitally. And in the website portion of that journey, there's something or things you want them to do. And so we invite you to map out that journey. Let's pretend it's e-commerce, right? I want them to go, I'll make up a flow. From the homepage to the category page, to the product detail or PDP page, to cart, to checkout, to thank you page, right? I want that flow. Okay, you think generally, what's that flow? Where are the points of drop off? Where are people abandoning this flow the most? In my humble opinion, that's the first place to start. So you've got some action you want them to take. You see the journey to get there. You see where people are dropping out. And then in those spots, what's their mindset? What's in their way? Why aren't they moving forward? And in my humble opinion, doing some qualitative and quantitative look at that is probably going to be very revealing and help you have better ingredients on the test run in those places. That's the first thing that comes to mind for me for that. Ben, I bet you have a bunch of thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I mean, starting with research, more and more, I tell myself, more and more I say the phrase, I don't think you should test, or no, I don't think that's a test, or no, we shouldn't test that. Instead, it's, we should do research. We should do a poll. We should do a survey. We should do user testing or message testing, or design prototype testing if we're looking at friction and we know what we're going to do. Let's push that forward. With the experimentation, there are tools that make it really easy. Telomize is definitely one of them, and you can put a lot of stuff in there. But I think that really where you get winners there, and the most use of the tool, is when you have those quality ingredients. You have a business strategy, you understand some customer problems, and so you've got some set hypotheses, and you're doing exploratory work on what execution works the best, and what is going to set us up for success or just not hurt as we roll something out. We get a new feature to roll out, or we get a new marketing plan, we're showing pricing for the first time. We just don't want to hurt our leads. So it's not a superiority type of test. It's more of a risk mitigation type of effort. That's where we're seeing mature programs, test more and more and more. So, just some rambling there. I kind of went off on that.
And it's great rambling. And I want to be thoughtful to give people a couple of minutes before their next meeting. We have several questions. Why don't you and I do 60 seconds each on this one, and then we'll break. Marcella asked, what tools do you recommend to measure your visitor's journey on your website? I actually thought this was a simple question to answer, and after spending a bunch of time on it, I think it's not at all simple. A bunch of the analytics tools out there, Google Analytics, Mixpanel, and a whole bunch of others will give you journey mapping. We found there's a lot of complexity there. There are zillions of journeys through your site. Because we saw that pain and because we think this is so foundational to where you devote your personalization, testing, and optimization efforts, we actually built one as well, not to out GA. They answer a zillion more questions, but this specific question, there's actually a lot of science and hard UX work to visualize what are the biggest journeys through the site to the things I care about. So we created one as well. And I think this insight, I would invite you not to get lost in the complexity, not to see a spider of 1,000 paths through your site, but rather pick what's my biggest starting point, what's the thing I want people to do, and look at the biggest paths through there in whatever tool you're using. Ben, you want to riff on that for a minute?
That's a big question. So, I mean, how much money do you have? That's the, you could, for GA, Hotjar, Mouseflow, ClickTail, Full Story, Content Square, that little list gets more and more expensive in terms of behavioral analytics, right? Who's ahead of the game here is the SaaS world, like enterprise SaaS world. Companies that are, have freemium models, are getting people into the product, and then they've got a data science team that are correlating journeys and touch points with aha moments, and they've got it all figured out. But then, I mean, you get a lot of 80/20 out of a tool like Hotjar for the cost, right? Like you get some heat mapping, you get some session recordings, you can get a lot of value out of that. GA, of course, on behavioral data, but in terms of the visual side of things, Full Story rocks. And if you can afford it, Content Square is really hot as well.
Ben, it was a pleasure to do this together. Thank you, everybody, for joining. We hope you found value in this, that this helps elevate your conversion rate optimization game. We'd both love to continue the conversation. You've got our emails here. Thank you for joining us today. Ben, you want to wrap as well?
Yeah, thanks, everybody. Send me an email if you got anything. Follow me on LinkedIn. That's where I have a lot of conversations on the business side of things. That's where I'm pretty active on social in my professional world. So find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Ben, looking forward to our next one. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.